live Facebook feed, live thing that we do. Thing. So, again, I am Ian Trevethan. I am the Education and Outreach Manager at the museum here. And I am here with our Zoological Collections Manager, Mr. Curtis J. Schmidt.
Thank you, Ian.
And there's this mysterious person standing next to you. Who is this?
So this is Jacob Alexander. He basically, I don't know if I'd claim him as a son, but basically he's been helping me and hanging around me most of his life.
Over half. Yeah, believe it or not.
Over half of his life, and he is 21 years old, and yes, women, he is single.
When he started, he was little. He was shorter than we are, and now he's...
So basically, Jacob is my right-hand man. Whenever I have to deal with snakes like this is the guy I call to. He is actually an employee of the museum here.
You'll see me around.
So he, as well as most of the staff, are called to do lots of different things. So as Ian mentioned, I am the Zoological Collections Manager, which means the bulk of my job is taking care of the scientific research collections of modern animals. But because we are such a small museum and a tight-knit staff, we are often called to come out of our comfort zone to do various educational programs, to work on exhibits, things like that. That's why I really, really like my job, is because I'm not stuck doing the same thing all the time.
I'm fairly certain right now that Curtis is out of his comfort zone.
This is not my comfort zone. My comfort zone is behind the scenes and behind the lens, not in front of it. So bear with me.
We live in weird times, so we are doing what we can to interact with the folks at home that would normally come to see us at the museum. So one of the big questions that I would like to ask you is, you've got a collection of pretty well-renowned venomous snakes in this room. Why would you do that?
Correct. Well, first off, this exhibit behind me represents every single species of rattlesnake native to the United States. The main reason behind that, and the reason why we started this exhibit in 2011, so quite a while ago, was basically to educate the public and start to basically get rid of misconceptions and myths that surround these things. I'm primarily a herpetologist by nature. That's what my main training is, and Jacob here as well. So we wanted to just get this and get the public out here learning these things, because there's so much misinformation out there.
So what you're saying is that rattlesnakes aren't evil or bad by nature?
Not at all. They're actually very gentle animals, as you'll see. Just like people, some of them are angry, some of them get aggressive. Some of them are very timid and very mellow. And you guys will get a chance here to learn this. What we're going to do today, we're not really going to tour the exhibit. So I apologize for that, but what you're going to get to see is kind of the day-to-day stuff that we have to do to keep this exhibit going. So the animal care, the animal handling, things like that. And trust me, nobody's got to see this yet. So this is brand new stuff. This is very exciting. So we're going to go behind the scenes here. You're now going to see behind the exhibit and what happens there. So follow us and we'll show you what happens. So if you take a look around, you'll see the behind the cages and behind the scenes is remarkably different than the other side, the side that you see on exhibit. You get to see in the cages, you get to see all the snakes. This is basically how we access them all. The big thing I want you guys to notice is all of these cages are on lockdown at all times. There's only 2 keys that go to every single one of these cages. I have one and Jacob has one. That is it. So we've got that, and then if you look over here, we've got a secondary locking system. So if we miss one by accident, there's the other one that's locked as well. So Jacob's going to show you right here the tiniest of rattlesnakes that we have in this exhibit, the Arizona ridge-nosed rattlesnake. While he's unlocking that, I want to show you something really interesting. Every one of these cages has a tag. The tag shows the species. The word hot means that it's venomous. And the number on the back is the actual number for the animal that's in the cage. So with most of these animals, we've got more than one individual of each species. So the way that we track where each individual is that number on the back. So they're not always on display, they're not always fed, they're not fed at the same time. So wherever this snake goes, the tag goes with it. So we always know which species or which individual of the species we've got.
So as we're doing this, we know that there are about 30 of you watching this live right now. Feel free to shoot us any questions that you might have about what we're doing, about what rattlesnakes are about what Curtis and Jacob do as herpetologists. We're here to answer your questions. We're here to interact with you. So definitely do that.
So what you're seeing right now is, as I mentioned, the smallest species of rattlesnake. This is about half grown. So they get about twice this size. And what we wanted to show you is the tiny little hook that we use to pick up and manipulate the snake. Hooks come in a wide variety of shapes and sizes that are basically for the different animals and the shapes and sizes that they come in as well. So because we are manipulating that one, I'm going to have Jacob take it out and we're going to fill its water bowl real quick. So there's a couple different ways that we can do this. We can either take it out and fill it directly, which is what he just did. Or if we don't want to take the animal out, we get a little creative. So we've got this nifty little light cover. We can keep a safe distance. And we can pour water into the bowl. Now I mentioned safe. Safety is the number one key for running this exhibit, both for the people that are handling the animals and for the animals themselves. Very important. You'll notice that I am the one talking. Jacob is the one that is going to be dealing with the snakes. He will not talk. He has to focus all of his energy and focus on the venomous snakes. They are all venomous. They are all dangerous. We have to respect that at all times.
So we have a question coming in. How many different species are in here?
Gosh, it's been so long I have to think about that. 24 different species we have here. Since we built this exhibit in 2011, some of the species have actually been split genetically. So we have 23 currently on display at any one time, but we do have 24 species.
So that's science changing.
That is science that is constantly changing, yes.
Let's see, a couple more questions coming in. Great, keep these questions coming. We love this. What is the biggest rattlesnake you have?
The biggest rattlesnake we have, that's a tough question because we haven't measured them lately. It's probably going to be one of the eastern diamondback rattlesnakes. When we got the eastern diamondbacks, they were smaller than Brutus, which you guys are going to see here in a little bit, which is a western diamondback rattlesnake. So we're probably looking at 5.5 to 6 feet in a very chunky snake. So they are very heavy bodied. But we will be pulling Brutus out here in a little bit to show you how that's done as well.
Do we still have the albino western diamondback?
We do actually have that. It is not currently on display. We also have what's relatively new to the exhibit is what's called hyperxanthic prairie rattlesnake, which hyperxanthic means it has an overabundance of yellow pigment. So for just the lay person to look at, they look at it, it's yellow, they probably think it's an albino. But it's not necessarily an albino because it is just yellow, but it has pigmented eyes. It just, for whatever genetic mutation may have occurred, has a major overabundance of yellow pigment.
How many of these types of rattlesnakes are in Kansas?
We have 5 different types of rattlesnakes in Kansas, which I believe includes the western diamondback rattlesnake now. Up until recently, it did not include that. They did not naturally occur in the state of Kansas. But just in the last year, they have been found just across the Oklahoma border into Kansas.
What would happen if Jacob got bit? Hi, Mom.
That's a great question, and we've always got to be prepared for the worst. So, the good thing is we are a very short drive from the hospital. They have plenty of treatment at the hospital, plenty of anti-venom at the hospital. If something were to happen and the person were to go into immediate shock, we actually have a EpiPen hanging on the wall right over here by the door. So we should have plenty of time, regardless of which of these snakes bites somebody, plenty of time to get to the hospital and be treated.
And related is another question, is that why we always use 2 people at a time?
Yes, absolutely. That is the number one reason, because somebody's always got to be watching the person that's handling the snakes. Safety, as I mentioned, is always number one. So nobody's ever even allowed back here by themselves. So what Jacob is demonstrating here is the typical hook technique. So again, hooks come in a wide variety of shapes and sizes. The easiest way to manipulate most venomous snakes is to simply pick it up with the hook. Now some of them, for whatever reason, are just a little too jumpy, a little too jittery, a little too wild. They don't want to what we call ride the hook. So basically they'll slink off of it, they'll try to crawl off of it as fast as they can, which can be a challenge. So Reese over here has the answer to that challenge. He's got a set of tongs. So tongs are basically to gently grip the snake, in like what's going to happen right now. The snake doesn't want to go in there. We don't want the snake to fall because it might injure itself. The snake also doesn't want to injure itself. But the tongs are a way of gently grabbing onto the snake and holding it so it doesn't fall. We tend not to use those as often as we can because they can potentially injure the snakes by grabbing them too hard. Some of the snakes, if you grab them, they will thrash very violently and they can break their own backs, things like that.
You got time for another question, Curtis?
One more as we move over here.
All right, I'm going to combine 2 questions. Number one, how do you know how much venom each snake has? And the other question is, does a bigger snake have more venom than a smaller snake?
Yes, that's actually a great question. One of the questions I get more often than any other question is, what is the most dangerous snake we've got in this room? What is the most deadly rattlesnake? Very similar question. To answer that question, you have to consider 2 different things. You have to consider how toxic the venom is. So drop for drop, how deadly is that venom? Okay? But also you have to consider, if it were to bite you, how much of that venom is it going to deliver? How much can it deliver? So it's not a simple, straightforward answer. You have to look at both of those. How toxic is it? And how much of that can they give you in a single bite? I guess to answer the question of how do you know how much they've got, the bigger the snake, the bigger the head, the bigger the venom glands inside the head. So the bigger the head, the bigger the venom glands they've got, the more venom they can deliver. Which is why the big snakes, like the western diamondback, the eastern diamondback, timber rattlesnake, they're pretty darn potent and dangerous because they pack quite a punch. They can give you quite a bit of venom, like this guy right here that he's about to pull out. On the other hand, some of the snakes are tiny and can only deliver a very tiny amount of venom. In general, those are the ones that are more toxic. But this is a perfect segue into why snakes have venom in the first place. It's not for protection. It's actually so that they can subdue or kill their prey and then begin to digest it before they even have to swallow it. So it's a very, very efficient feeding mechanism. So they grab the mouse, they inject it immediately, the venom goes to work right away to immobilize the prey, to kill the prey, and then immediately start digesting it from the inside out. So that prevents the prey from turning around and attacking the snake and putting a powerful bite on the snake. Things like that. So I hope that answered your question. So we're going to turn our focus back over here to Jacob, who's going to show you Brutus, our big western diamondback rattlesnake, he's too heavy for a single hook. It's going to be bad for him. It's going to be hard to handle. So this is the double hook technique. So you'll notice he's supporting as much of that body as possible, which is the best for the snake and the easiest to control the snake as well. So you can also see this is the size of the container that we put them in as we're switching snakes out. So basically, periodically, about every 2 weeks, we will switch out these snakes. And again, what Jacob forgot here, he just remembered, is that tag that goes with it. So we always know which snake is exactly where. So now he's going to go through the reverse process here and show you how simple it can be to move these snakes using the double hook method. Again, it's always important to have somebody on the side, like Reese here, with the tongs, in case this wasn't to work out the way you want it to, basically. And as you see, sometimes the best way to do it, because the snake won't have it any other way, is to get it on the ground first and then begin to manipulate it. And if it becomes tricky because he will not ride the hooks, as I mentioned before, there you go, Jacob. That's what the tongs are for, to assist in that. So again, we always stress the safety of the people working with the snakes, as well as the safety of the snakes. The snakes are also very, very valuable as well because of their education value.
Where do you want to go next,
So
Chris?
thank you, guys. So we will go next to probably one of the most difficult snakes to deal with because of its attitude, and probably, in my opinion, maybe some people will disagree, but the most dangerous snake that we've got. Again, because it's very toxic and it's a good-sized snake and can deliver a pretty powerful punch. But this one right here is the Mojave rattlesnake that we're going to be dealing with right here. This particular individual, and as I mentioned before, individuals can vary in their attitude and their temperament. This one right here from day one, when we captured it in 2011, has been very aggressive, very dangerous. You'll see Jacob just put on safety goggles, and Reese did as well. That is because occasionally they will strike. They'll strike at whatever's coming at them, and occasionally they will make contact with something, and the pressure will make the venom spray into the air. So you don't want that in your eyes, you don't want it in your mouth, things like that. So hopefully this goes well, but it doesn't always, because again, this snake is very, very squirrely and just does not like to be messed with at all. I see we're doing a good job on moving some people from fear to fascination. That is wonderful news.
And I'd also like to reiterate that it looks like we've got about 50 people watching. So if you just joined us and didn't hear us say this before, feel free to send us any questions that you've got. We'll try to answer them. As well as please share and like our live feed, please.
We'll also have some time here in a little bit. We're actually going to do a live feeding of one of the snakes, which will give you quite a bit of time to answer any questions that you might have. So we'll be doing lots of live Q&A here in a little bit as you're watching a snake feed. So well done, gentlemen. Again, that is probably one of the most dangerous snakes that we have, based on its attitude, its temperament. It's not out to kill people, it's not out to hurt people, it's only out to protect itself, but also because of the potency of the venom and the size of the snake.
So yeah, you can see a little bit of venom here on the tongs, and so this is why we wear these goggles and these eye protections, because occasionally the snake will strike and maybe catch just a little bit of its mouth on the tongs, and then the venom can go projectile in the air. And we don't want that in our eyes and in our face, and so that's why we wear these safety precautions.
Now the last thing that we're going to do for you guys is we are going to walk you through a cage cleaning. I know, this is fun. This is the exciting stuff, right? No. But it's necessary. So I'm going to walk backwards and try not to trip over a snake that's on the ground.
Or me.
Or anybody else that's in this room. So we're going to show you what's done here typically. Jacob's going to go ahead and pull the snake out. I'm going to glove up for sanitary reasons. And we're going to show you what's done. And again, think about this being done on a weekly basis to every single one of these cages. This is the Grand Canyon rattlesnake. One of the rarest snakes that we have in collection because it's only found 90% of its range is within Grand Canyon National Park and then just the immediate surrounding area. That's it. That's the only place this thing's found in the world.
Okay, you're all clear.
As I'm trying to get my gloves on, fumbling over my gloves. One size fits most. I don't think so. I've got really tiny hands and this just isn't cutting it. But it'll do the job. So, no more snake in here. So, the snake has gone to the bathroom a couple times. So this is a good segue into talking about the snakes. I mentioned that we have a whole bunch more that are not on display and that they get routinely changed out, right? Any cage that we have that does not have a water bowl in it has multiple snakes of that species. So they are fed, they are watered, they go to the bathroom in another room. This one right here, because it is so rare, we were lucky enough to get our hands on one of them. Two of them would be really difficult. So we've got a water bowl in here because it never comes off display. So a good thing to think about is these are not the cages for all these animals. These are the display cases for these animals. The cages are elsewhere. So I'm going to continue pulling out the fecal material. The poop, if you will. With my lovely one size fits most.
Do you want to show them what the poop looks like?
If you can see, that little clump right there is poop, which is mostly white stuff that is crystallized uric acid. So snakes do not pee. They actually have uric acid crystals that comes out with their poop. And then snakes cannot digest fur, which is interesting. So they actually poop out fur. And they also cannot digest their own fangs, which is bizarre. I don't even know, I don't have an explanation as to why this is. I imagine there's something in the enamel that prevents it, but they will poop out their own fangs. They shed their fangs very often because they are very fragile. They've always got at least one set of replacement fangs that are waiting to come in. So biting prey, eating prey, they're swallowing their teeth all the time because they break off, they accidentally swallow it, and then eventually it comes out the backside. Fascinating stuff. So, one of the other things we have to do is they like to climb around. Right now is the middle of the day. They're sitting coiled, hoping something for them to eat comes along. But at night, they're very, very active. They're moving all over these cages. So they scuff up the glass and get it all dirty. So we have to, this is just plain water. So we spray down the glass, wipe it down, get it good and clean. Make sure everybody can see it. I just found something else very fascinating I can show you in this cage. Lots of people think that the way that you age a rattlesnake is by counting the number of rattle segments it's got on its string. That could not be further from the truth for a number of reasons. One, every single time they shed their skin, a new segment forms. But two, and most importantly, is they are very, very fragile. They're made up of the same material as our fingernails, keratin, and they are loosely interlocking segments. So they break a lot as the snake's crawling around in its natural habitat, through rocks, through burrows. It snags on things. It's why you very rarely see a snake with a really long rattle, because they break so routinely. But the takeaway here is you cannot age a rattlesnake by counting the number of segments it's got on its rattle.
So that begs the question, how do you tell how old a snake is?
Well, there really is no way to tell how old a snake is. Unless you raise it yourself and you know exactly how old it is. There's really no way. There are formulas, there's mathematical formulas out there to be able to estimate how old a snake is by taking measurements of its rattle, of each rattle segment, and how many are on the string, and whether it's a complete string and things like that. But it's only an estimate. It's not definitive. So it's really difficult to be able to truthfully know how old a snake is unless you raised it yourself. So now I'm going to fill up the water bowl. I'm going to do the traditional method, since there's no snake in here to worry about. So again, there's only a handful of these individuals that we have to feed on display. We have to continuously clean the poop out of their cages, and we have to give them water. So now I'm going to deglove. I'm done with that. We're going to put this little guy back, and then we're going to feed him. So while Jacob and Reese are getting this guy ready to be fed, we're going to walk outside so we get a better view of this whole process, and I will begin answering any questions that you might have. Fire away when ready, Ian.
Okay, there are questions. Number one, how selective are these snakes about food when they're in the wild?
Usually not very selective at all. They are opportunistic. That being said, they have evolved to eat certain things that are prevalent in the areas where they live. Most of them will take rodents. That's all we feed these things. We raise our own rodents. You're going to see one of them here in a little bit. So they can all take rodents, but they will take lizards, small birds, some will take insects. It all depends on the variety of the snake, how big the snake is, and what's available as far as prey in the area that they live.
How long do they live?
When they're well taken care of, they can probably live 20 to 30 years easily. In the wild, they're lucky to make it to 10. The reason why is because there's so many things out there that are after them. Lots of predators trying to get at them, diseases trying to get at them, parasites getting at them. So if they make it to 10 in the wild, they're really, really lucky. But well taken care of snakes like this can last 20 to 30 years easily.
How often do they shed their skin?
They shed their skin pretty much seasonally, and it all depends on growth. It's kind of like when we have to buy new socks, basically. We outgrow our socks. They outgrow their skin. But they also do it seasonally. So I'm going to say on average 4 to 5 times a year. Unless the snake is growing more rapidly, then probably anywhere from 6 to 10 times a year. So the juvenile snakes that grow very, very quickly will shed their skins more often.
All right, so when you give these animals water, do you give them a special kind, like distilled water?
We give them reverse osmosis water, basically because the water here is so hard and so full of lime and calcium that it's not good for their systems. It's not good for mine either because I'm a chronic kidney stone producer. So me and snakes have to drink special water.
You're not alone. What do snakes eat? Do they primarily just eat rodents, or are there other things that snakes like to eat?
Primarily they eat rodents, and snakes in general, or venomous snakes, I guess would be the question.
We'll say venomous snakes, since that's what we're discussing right now.
Venomous snakes and rattlesnakes primarily eat rodents. Some of the smaller species that live in rock outcrops primarily eat lizards, just because they're more prevalent. But they will take, as I mentioned, they'll take whatever is appropriate for their size.
And we do have plans to discuss some non-venomous snakes here in the very near future, so we'll talk about that in a later cast. What are snakes' main predators?
You guys can fire away. Snakes' main predators, that's a good one. They have a lot of them, both on ground and in the air. So I'm going to try and answer this question as you guys are watching this, and hopefully the snake cooperates. But this snake usually has a very good feeding response. And you'll see what just happened. It quickly bit and envenomated the mouse. Now it just sits back and waits for the mouse to die, as we're going to watch. I apologize for the graphicness of this, but it's just the way life is.
You know, this is nature, and you know, in the wild, nature is a tough place. So
Right.
this is how we learn about the natural world. So it may seem unpleasant to some people, but we promise this is as humane as we can make it.
And if you remember, when I was talking about venom and what venom is for, you might ask why we feed live mice. I prefer to feed live mice because I prefer that the snakes actually get to use their venom for what it's for. And that is for killing the mouse, but also for aiding in digestion. So the enzymes in that venom are currently breaking down the insides of that mouse. So very, very efficient mechanism for digestion.
So I'm going to take this moment to talk about rodents, mice particularly. So these are animals that from the time that they're born to the time that they can have more babies, we're talking about 21 days or about 3 weeks. So for each mouse that is born, in 3 weeks they're able to reproduce, and they have litters of what, 5 to 10?
Yeah.
So the amount of rodents to any other animal is crazy. So if we did not have snakes doing what they do, we would be up to our ears in not just mice, or not just rodents, but rodent poop.
Without a doubt. And they carry diseases. Snakes do not carry any diseases. Rodents carry several diseases. So they're doing us a huge favor. And also ticks, tick-borne diseases. Lots of rattlesnakes eat lots of things that carry lots of ticks. So not only are they swallowing their prey, they're also swallowing what lives on their prey. So they're getting rid of lots of parasites and ticks from the environment. But let me take a step back because I don't want to get away from that guy's question about what the different predators are of snakes. But a very wide variety of things from raccoons and opossums and skunks, coyotes, things like that, to avian predators like owls and hawks and eagles, things like that. But there's also a handful of non-venomous snakes that love to eat venomous snakes. Their favorite food is snakes. So we're looking at king snakes, coach whips, racers, things like that. Love to eat venomous snakes. So if you're watching this, the snake is just waiting for that mouse to die. And in the wild, basically the snake bit and injected the mouse and then sits back and waits. It could take a while for that mouse to die, or it could die immediately, depending on how it was injected. But the really interesting thing that fascinates me, and this goes into biochemistry, is once there's venom injected into that mouse, it actually changes the way that mouse smells to the snake. So it knows what trail to take. It doesn't just latch onto a trail of any random mouse that's out there. It knows which trail is from the mouse that it just injected, which is just fascinating information to me.
So I have a couple of reproduction questions here. Do these snakes, the rattlesnakes, lay eggs or do they give live birth?
Oh, well, that's a great question and kind of a tough one to answer. They do both, actually. Basically, what they have is internal eggs that don't have shells. So they give live birth, but it's basically with an egg membrane and a fully developed baby inside. So basically they have eggs that develop inside. They don't get laid. They basically hatch out and the live animal is then given birth to.
And the follow-up question, how many eggs do they lay at a time or in their lifetimes?
So again, they don't lay eggs, they have live young, but they are internally developed young. They reproduce just about every year, depending on latitude, where in the world you are. Where we're at here in Kansas, they reproduce every year or every other year. So it all depends. On average, rattlesnakes will have 12 live young. So we're looking at anywhere from 5 to 20, with an average of about 12. So what's going on with this snake right now is it's trying to find the head of the snake, because this snake knows that the best way to swallow prey that it just killed is nose first, because as it swallows it, all of the limbs will get folded back. Imagine if it started from the tail and had to go over those limbs that are being folded unnaturally in the wrong direction. It just doesn't happen. So basically, it has to swallow it head first so it can naturally just slide right on down. And you just saw it yawn, basically. Basically, what's going on there is that snake just realigned its jaws. So, you know, the old adage that snakes can unhinge their jaws to swallow their prey, not necessarily true, but basically they've got two independent mandibles, which are the lower jaws, that are connected by basically elastic, a big band of connective tissue. So if you can imagine, when it opens its mouth, it can open it the typical way like we do, but then it can also open it sideways as well, with that band in the middle stretching out tremendously. So when it bites something, when it swallows something, it knocks those things out of place. So the yawn that you guys just saw is making sure that all the bones are back in the proper alignment.
Okay, here's a really good question. What are some ways predators of venomous snakes prevent getting bit? Is it some sort of immunity?
Some predators or some prey do have an immunity. It's very interesting. There are certain species of ground squirrels that have co-evolved with northern Pacific and southern Pacific rattlesnakes in California. Basically, it's an arms race. It's who can stay ahead of the other. So will the venom that also evolves very, very rapidly, will it outpace and out-evolve? Sorry.
Where'd Jacob go?
Sorry, we're getting distracted by other questions.
We love Jacob too.
Just lost my train of thought.
It's okay. That's been happening around.
So anyway, yes, some prey items have an immunity. Some are really good with really quick lightning fast reflexes at jumping away. But for the most part, the snakes have the upper advantage. They know how to get their prey.
So, how many of these did you personally go out and collect? And how did that work?
Oh, I would say I probably personally collected maybe a third to a half of these. I got them from all over the place. I got them from zoos. I got them from friends in other parts of the country that went out and collected them. Some of them are actually captive bred by certain friends of mine. So basically all over the place, but I did probably get a good, 7 or 8 of these species, if not more. And that's a big part of my job that I really love, because I get to go out and not only find the animals, but I get to learn about the habitats that they come from and the areas that they live in.
So when I first started working here and kind of started to get to know you, you were doing some stuff you were consulting for other entities and helping them sort of, I guess, mitigate, for lack of better words, rattlesnake populations that were,
Yeah, so I did have a consulting job that basically, as much as it hurts me to say it, involved rattlesnake removal. So there was basically a huge population of rattlesnakes where a lot of humans were coming in contact with them. One person had actually gotten bitten. So we went out and checked out the property and found that there was so many snakes there. So it was our job to basically get rid of the snakes from the area. Now, it was a very small area, and as much as we like to conserve these animals and recognize their importance, there are special cases where they need to be either removed or dispatched. Rattlesnakes in particular, unfortunately in Kansas, which is 98 to 99% private property, you can't just catch a bunch of rattlesnakes, venomous snakes, and release them on someone else's property. That is generally frowned upon. So unfortunately we had to dispatch them. We brought them here to the museum and added them to our research collections and made something really, really cool happen though. There was actually a gal that got her master's degree working up all those specimens and basically looking at the natural history of a giant population of prairie rattlesnakes that came from one small area. So we learned a tremendous amount about those animals. So it's one of those cases where, you know, a lot of snakes had to die, but they died for a very good cause because we learned more about the species, more about how it lives in this area, and things like that. So conservation can move forward.
Well, and that's where I was going, is conservation type things sometimes take weird avenues, I suppose.
Yes,
so here's what I would imagine to be a very tough question. Do you have a favorite rattlesnake, and if so, what is it?
Goodness, that is a very tough question. I'm going to have to go with the Arizona black rattlesnake for a couple different reasons. They're very, very pretty. I like the way that they're colored. But mostly because their temperament, they are so laid back. They're very, very mellow snakes. The two that we have are not aggressive at all.
Let's look at this one for a second, because the one he's talking about is right next door. We can come back to this one eating the mouse here in just a second. Let's just take a look at the Arizona black rattlesnake since Curtis.
So this one here is my favorite because I just like the coloration, I like the pattern, but mostly because the temperament is very, very gentle. Whenever I do pull these out for people to touch, which we will probably be doing in the future with one of these Facebook Lives, by the way, they're just not, they're very, very mellow. They don't get too worked up. So that would probably be my favorite. And they're a medium-sized snake too.
How long does it take for a rattlesnake to give birth?
Not very long at all. Start to finish, usually 30 minutes to an hour, I would say. But I would also say that I've never really watched the entire process happen. So I don't really know. But once it begins, it usually doesn't take that long.
All right, so here's a question. Are there animals at the museum that you feed the snakes, or you feed the snakes?
Yes, actually, you look at the mouse that we're feeding this snake right now. This is captive produced here at the museum. So we produce all of the food for these snakes here at the museum, as well as the non-venomous snakes that you guys are going to see eventually. We have a large colony of laboratory mice that we breed just to feed animals. So,
could a rattlesnake eat a cat?
A very large rattlesnake could eat a very small cat. Yes.
Like a kitten?
Like a kitten.
Okay.
Sure.
So there's your answer there.
Same thing with a puppy. A tiny puppy could be eaten by a very large rattlesnake. But in general, most rattlesnakes don't get big enough to do that. Now, as you probably know, most of them can be killed by any of these rattlesnakes.
So, what is your primary interest as the zoological collections manager? Are you more interested in herps and reptiles? Do you have something else that you're maybe interested in that maybe we could explore some other time on a live feed?
Yeah, that's the wonderful question. My first and primary love is herps, the amphibians and reptiles. But within the last 10 years, I've really gotten into studying bats. I really like bats. So one of the, I don't know, within the next week probably, I think we're going to be doing a Facebook Live on bats, and I'll be telling you all about those as well.
I have a bat suit.
You are Batman, so
I'm Batman.
There you go.
Is there a snake that can eat a person?
I'm going to go with no. Has it happened in the past? Yes. There's been very, very large reticulated pythons in Indonesia that have consumed humans before, but very, very, very rare. The problem is they can kill people with their constriction. They're definitely big enough, strong enough to do that, but getting past the shoulders is very, very difficult for these snakes. So they could try to eat a human, but getting past the shoulders is going to be next to impossible.
Okay, well.
So as you guys have seen, this is the process of a snake. eating. Sometimes it takes a lot longer, sometimes it goes a lot quicker.
So how long will it take for this snake to digest the mouse that it's eating right now?
Typically at the temperatures that we keep them at, which is mid to upper 70s, they will be digested in 3 to 4 days.
So what do snakes do when it gets cool outside?
These snakes, or snakes in the wild, these snakes, it never gets cool, so they're active year-round.
So I guess that would be snakes in the wild.
The ones in the wild, they have to hibernate, so they have to get to where it's not going to be that cold. So typically, large burrows, deep burrows. Some species will come out on days like today when it gets relatively warm. And happy spring, by the way. Today is the beginning of spring. Doesn't happen until 10-something tonight, but hey, I'll take
Well,
it.
here in Hayes, it's a beautiful day outside. I actually spent some time outside at lunchtime today. It was great.
Yes, so most of the time during the winter they are underground, they are inactive, they are ice cold, till it warms up again.
So they're not doing a whole lot of eating when it's cold.
Nope.
So besides rodent control, why are venomous snakes important in the environment?
Well, you nailed the number one reason is rodent control. And that is a very tough question to answer. And the way that I prefer to answer it is in an ecosystem context. So all of the ecosystems out there have all their definitive components. So all the different species that live in an ecosystem, whether it's the plants, the animals, all of those different things, they belong in that ecosystem. If you start removing components of an ecosystem, it's going to have a domino effect. So if we take a species of rattlesnake from its habitat and its ecosystem, then it's going to negatively impact different things. It's going to negatively impact the prey populations, the predators, and eventually you're going to have total ecosystem collapse. It's going to take some time because, as I said, it's a domino effect. You remove one, eventually another one's going to die off, another one's going to become more prevalent, causing more to die off, and eventually you're going to have total ecosystem collapse. So that's the easiest way to answer a question that could take me 3 hours to answer.
So, okay, one more question, and then we're going to have to sign off here because we're kind of running low on time. This is great. We have a lot of people joining us. This is awesome. We hope you keep doing this and keep sending us questions.
And I will be answering your questions online for the rest of the day. Just bear with me and have some patience.
So, final question is, during what period did snakes evolve?
Oh gosh, we have fossil snakes going back to, gosh, I'm not sure I know that. You're the paleontologist, you answer that question.
Reese?
Jurassic.
Jurassic.
Which is how many million years ago is Jurassic?
We're talking about
150, 160? Okay. So between 150 and 160 million years ago.
That was a tough question. Stump the herpetologist.
Yeah, well, you stumped the paleontologist. Good thing my boss was here to tell me.
Save the best for last.
So, well, you know, it just goes to show we specialize in big fields, but when you specialize in something, it's pretty...
I study modern animals. That's not very modern, the Jurassic.
Well, you know, it's all scope.
It is.
So I think this would be a good time to probably wrap our live feed up. This has been a good long one. We will be back tomorrow morning. Again, I would like to thank everybody for tuning in, everybody who has sent us likes. We'd encourage people to continue to rewatch any of these feeds, share them as much as you can, give us as many likes as you can. This is important to us. It keeps us coming in here, it gives us something to do, and hopefully we're able to deliver something important to you at home that keeps you interested and gives you something to do.
So thank you guys for being here and for watching. I know these are tough times for everyone. We're on quarantine too, so we come here just to do this, and then we have to go back home. Just stay level-headed. Don't go buy all the toilet paper at the stores. And this too will pass. So just do what you're told and what you're supposed to do. Everything will be fine. But continue watching these videos as long as we can produce them, because we don't know how long that'll be either.
So yeah, we're breaking our 6-foot distance here. That's okay. I'm pretty sure that you're okay. So
You're okay too.
Yeah, I know. I try. So I'm Ian, and this is Curtis, and we are saying goodbye from the Sternberg. We'll see you tomorrow.
Bye.
Bye.